a solo survival challenge in the wilderness. Each participant is allowed to bring only 10 items. 8 contestants are dropped near a lake, deep in the Nordic region of Antovetien. In this place, they must not only build shelter and search for food, but also stay constantly alert for any unexpected situation that may occur. The one with the strongest survival skills, who endures until the very end, will win a prize of $500,000. As the program's yacht docks, the 8 contestants are released one by one at different starting points. The first to appear is Gel. Just by looking at his thick beard, you can tell he might be a true survival expert. Watching the production crew leave means that from this moment on, everything is up to him alone. Before joining the competition, he was a lecturer, teaching survival skills at a university. Since his youth, he has been deeply passionate about nature. According to him, every time he is in the wilderness, he feels an indescribable sense of safety. This time, in order to earn money for his 2 sons, he decided to sign up to join this challenge and test his luck. Less than 2 minutes after landing, he discovered a small stream nearby. Where there is water, there is food. For him, this was incredibly good news. The most urgent task now was to find a place to build shelter. He chose a flat patch of ground. Gail set up a waterproof tarp as a roof. Just like that, he had a dry place to sleep for the night. If he wanted to get ahead of the other competitors, he needed to secure a food source quickly. First, he carefully observed the area around the lake. Then he took off all his clothes, carrying only a net, completely naked, and waded into the water. After swimming to the opposite shore, he secured the net across the current. Before long, he had completed a fish-catching barrier in the middle of the lake. He thought, if this doesn't catch fish, then nothing will. To avoid hypothermia, he quickly returned to shore and put his clothes back on. Now, all he had to do was wait until morning to see if there would be a fish feast. The second contestant to appear is Raasmus, who has just landed. He immediately used a compass to determine the direction of sunrise. He found a spot slightly higher than the water level and decided to set up camp there. Unexpectedly, as he turned around, he tripped and fell hard to the ground. Raasmus is 24 years old, from the city of Hillerød, Denmark. He is an industrial engineer. His most valuable possession is his motorhome. He eats and sleeps and works entirely inside it. Whenever he has free time, he drives to remote wilderness areas to travel. His love for nature and desire to challenge himself pushed him to sign up for this program. Once after finding a large fallen log, he secured it against a nearby tree. Then he draped a waterproof tarp over it. And just like that, he had a simple shelter for the night. Since he had just arrived, everything around him was soaking wet. He decided that tonight he would only drink some cold water and then go to sleep. The third contestant is Z, the oldest participant this season. Even though she is already 54 years old, she still firmly decided to join the competition. As the saying goes, the older the ginger, the spicier it gets. Her endurance is even stronger than that of the younger contestants. As soon as she arrived, she quickly surveyed the terrain around her. She found a flat patch of ground between 2 tree stumps and decided to build her shelter right there. She didn't even bother cutting nearby trees, instead pulling branches down and covering them with a waterproof tarp. It didn't look very pretty, but at least she wouldn't get soaked by the rain inside. Before joining the show, she lived on a small island with a horse. Every day, she rode it for leisure, living a calm and peaceful life. As for why she joined the competition, she said it was mainly because retirement left her bored. With nothing else to do, she waited until the sky cleared before crawling out of her shelter. Not wanting to freeze in the middle of the night, she knew she had to start a fire immediately. But the problem was, everything here was damp. Even after striking the flint hundreds of times, she couldn't produce a single spark. With no other choice, she could only sigh and accept her fate, telling herself that since she was here, she might as well endure it. The fourth person to appear is Burke, who served in the military for over 8 years. As a veteran, logically, his survival skills shouldn't be bad. However, right after arriving, he fumbled around for more than half an hour and still couldn't choose a campsite. In the end, he randomly picked a tree base and set up a temporary shelter. After that, he went to the lakeshore to scout the surroundings. After leaving the army, his life had been fairly stable, but his years in the military still filled him with pride. As people often say, 2 years of service feel like a short nap. Yet you wake up and still don't see the day you go home, let alone serving for 8 whole years. Whenever he had free time, he would flip through old photos from his army days, remembering the harsh missions, and wishing he could return to the battlefield once more. To relive that thrill and challenge, he signed up for this survival competition. Time moves into the second day. After sleeping in the camp for a full day and night, Burke realized his whole body was soaked to the bone. In this condition, starting a fire was nearly impossible. The harsh weather drove him furious, almost giving him a heart attack. In the morning, he stepped outside to relieve himself, and as dawn slowly broke, he decided to build a more permanent shelter. He tied several large logs into a tripod frame and spent nearly half a day wrapping the tarp around it. Inside, his belongings were neatly arranged. He even installed a drying rack overhead. After finishing all that work, he finally had time to sit down and plan for the next day. Meanwhile, early in the morning, Gail walked around the lake. By chance, he picked up a long, straight bamboo pole. This was truly a treasure, perfect for making a fishing rod. But fishing could wait. Today was the first day to check the net. Filled with excitement, he pulled the net up from the water. Halfway through, he already saw 2 small fish. When he finished pulling it up, he had caught 4 salmon. For a start, having a meal like this was incredibly fortunate. Back at camp, he prepared to cook a hearty feast. But what he didn't expect was that, even after striking the flint dozens of times, the tinder still refused to catch fire. There was no need to say it. The humidity in the air was simply too high. This made him furious. He sat down on the ground thinking for a moment. In the end, he had no choice but to eat it raw, making a salmon sashimi meal. The taste was actually decent, the meat chewy and sweet. Wild fish truly has a huge difference. Meanwhile, on Raasmus's side, as morning came, he felt in pretty good spirits. He had slept fairly peacefully in his shelter last night. He then laid out his plan for today. First, set up a fishing net, because here, fish meat is the easiest source of protein. He cut down a sturdy tree trunk, planning to use it as a stake to secure the net. But after thinking it over, this method didn't seem very reliable. So he hesitated from morning until afternoon, cut down more than 10 additional trunks, and built 2 tripod frames. From a distance, it looked like he was building a professional fishing bridge. The 5th contestant to appear is Eddie. By now, he had already finished setting up his tent. As for finding food, he planned to worry about that later. Not wanting to stay soaked in the freezing rain, he decided to try starting a campfire. Luckily, when he first arrived, he had picked up some dry tinder. After striking the flint hundreds of times, the first flame finally burst to life. He comes from the Prester Bay region of Denmark. Previously, he worked as an animal caretaker. But after getting tired of looking after pets in his spare time, he usually stayed home doing crafts and grilling meat for fun. So for him, the biggest problem in this competition was not the weather, but hunger. Taking advantage of the rain just stopping, he went behind the camp and picked some blueberries for breakfast. Picking and eating at the same time, before long, his stomach was full of happiness. But on the way back, he suddenly spotted something black that looked like bear droppings. This unexpected sight filled him with fear, because that spot was less than 100 meters from his camp. If a black bear decided to visit at midnight, the outcome would surely be a one-way trip to the afterlife. Time moves into the 3rd day. The 6th contestant appears, Acid. As soon as she arrived, she skillfully set up her tent. But unfortunately, she cut the back of her hand. She said seeing blood at the start meant good luck. Fortunately, it was only a minor scratch. After cleaning up, she quickly started a fire. Now, the 3 basic survival elements were all complete, so she decided to go to the lake to check her net. After all, to live well, protein is essential. Back home, she's a long-distance cycling enthusiast. As long as she has a bicycle, she can go anywhere. She also loves adventurous travel, wandering to remote, uninhabited places rarely touched by human footsteps. So this time she was very confident. But as soon as she reached the lakeshore, she saw movement in the water. She was so excited her eyes shone like headlights. Carefully, she pulled up the net. Just as she finished handling the first fish, the second one got caught right after. And they weren't small either. When she pulled the entire net ashore, she had caught 3 fat salmon. But the price she paid was a badly torn net, ripped in several large spots. Fixing it would surely take a lot of effort and time. The 7th contestant is San. At this moment, she is racking her brain to find a way to catch fish so she can set her net more easily. She tied her foam sleeping pad underneath as a float, then carried her gear to the lakeshore. She hurled the net out with all her strength, but the wind and waves were too strong, so no matter how hard she tried, nothing worked. She already had a fiery temper, and this situation nearly made her explode on the spot. Before joining the competition, she had been a professional climber in her youth, dominating competitions everywhere. Even though she's retired now, she still loves outdoor sports, constantly challenging herself. To test her limits, even at 51 years old, she ignored her family's worries and signed up. With the fierce competitiveness of an athlete, she declared she would sweep aside all rivals and win. Back at camp, she calmed down for a moment, knowing she couldn't keep starving like this. So she built a makeshift floating device, planning to use it to swim out and fish in the middle of the lake. No sooner said than done, she grabbed the saw and got to work immediately. After half a day of effort, she only managed a tiny plank, then had to hammer in a few small stakes to secure the rope. When everything was ready, she returned to the lake, but even after more than 10 throws, the board still wouldn't drift out at all. In the end, she had to give up. At this rate, she joked she might as well go home and grow vegetables. Meanwhile, it was finally harvest day for Raasmus. He eagerly pulled up his net and surprisingly caught a fish weighing about 1.5 kilos. He quickly grabbed a stone and ended it swiftly and cleanly. Fresh food like this had to be handled right away. He rushed back to camp and started a fire, cooking a piece of fish. And the moment it touched his mouth, the tender meat melted, rich and fragrant. Only after eating his fill did he realize fish meat was truly the lifeline of a survivor. As long as he kept a rhythm of 1 fish a day, his chances of winning were high. Eddie, on the other hand, slept in and only went to check his fishing trap at noon. When he pulled it up, the hook was cleaner than his own face. With no breakfast, he could only sip hot water to warm his stomach. Day 4. Eddie started building a small raft to hold his net. Of course, this raft couldn't be ridden. It was just to support the net. He tied one end of the net to it and used a stick to push it farther out. Afraid it wouldn't float well enough, he even attached the inflatable float the show had provided, hoping it would drift farther and spread the net evenly underwater. While others were enjoying fish feasts, she still hadn't managed to properly set a single net. She noticed a glove with a round hole, cut it into strips, so pulling the line across the lake would take less effort. First, she tied one end of the net to a tree branch, then walked along the shore to the opposite side. Before long, the net was finally set. Now she only had to wait for fish to swim into the trap. The last person to appear was Law. A few days earlier, he had found a pile of old planks by the lake. The boards themselves weren't worth much, but the nails in them were as precious as gold. He removed them all, knowing they'd be useful someday. He was a teacher, specializing in teaching outdoor survival skills. Since childhood, he had loved nature, so even while working, he preferred being outdoors. Before joining this competition, he had prepared very carefully. He had even trained extra climbing skills. White worried that if he didn't win the championship, his students would laugh at him back home. Not long after, he had removed dozens of iron nails, then used the wooden planks to quickly build a chair, placing it inside his camp. The size and height fit perfectly, only after finishing did he go out to find food. He carefully searched along the stream and discovered a treat he had dreamed of. A kind of thorny root. Not sure if anyone knows what it is. It tastes slightly sour and sweet and gives the body a good energy boost. He gathered some and brought them back to camp, briefly prepared them, then put them in the pot to cook. Lunch was eaten with half a piece of fish. Up to this point, he was developing quite steadily. Time moved on to day 5. Burke's situation, however, was not good. For 5 days straight, he hadn't caught any protein at all. He was more anxious than anyone. The reason he still hadn't properly set his net was that it had rained non-stop for 5 days where he stayed, draining all his motivation to work. His body was so weak that even wading into the lake left him breathless. After much effort, he finally reached the other side and hurriedly secured the net. After finishing, he sat by the lake, face full of disappointment, feeling he wasn't suited for this kind of survival at all. Thinking about his years as a soldier, and now unable to endure wind and rain, he grew even more frustrated. By afternoon, hunger became unbearable, so he checked the net earlier than planned. Perhaps heaven took pity on him, because there really were 2 small fish in the net. Though each was smaller than his fist, at least he wouldn't starve tonight. Just as he was about to head back for the pot, he suddenly slipped and fell face first. The fall was no joke. He lay still, unable to move, and struggling didn't help. Afraid he might die there, he called for rescue. Minutes later, a rescue boat quickly arrived, and he was already waiting by the shore. A doctor performed a quick check, suspecting possible rib injuries, and advised him to go to the hospital for scans. Hearing this, he was furious. Things had just started improving, and he hadn't even eaten the fish yet, but now he had to quit because of this. With no other choice, he accepted the harsh reality, packed his things, and left the competition early. Meanwhile, Gail probably had the most abundant food supply. Just by checking his net briefly, he already had 7 or 8 salmon. He quickly fried them golden on both sides in a pot, but the smoke from the fire made his eyes burn so badly he could hardly open them. After lunch, he decided to improve his cooking setup. Living in such a tattered shelter, without a stove for warmth, he'd surely freeze when it got cold. So, building a proper heater became his top priority. He carried a large backpack to the lakeshore to gather stones, then carefully stacked them one by one, filling the gaps with sand. Before long, the stove was complete. He took a handful of dry fluff as tinder, struck the stones hard a few times, and the flame leapt up instantly as he tested the fire. But unexpectedly, the more it burned, the thicker the smoke grew. In just a moment, the entire shelter was filled with dense smoke. He couldn't stand it anymore. He had to run outside just to breathe some fresh air. According to him, this stove could still be improved. If it doesn't work out, he can always add a chimney later. Overall, this attempt was still a pretty solid success. He then went to the lake to fetch water and boil it for drinking. Over on Eddie's side, when he planned to move to a new shelter today, living in this tent, less than 3 square meters wide, he was already sick of it. But while moving his gear, a reindeer suddenly appeared on the opposite mountainside, a perfect source of protein, practically served up, yet he still didn't have the courage to hunt it. He went to the lake to check his net, but still not a single fish in sight, so he took it down and reset it from scratch, believing this time it would definitely work. Sure enough, by afternoon, before he even reached the spot, he saw the net shaking hard. He hurried to pull it up, and fish began surfacing one after another. His heart raced with excitement. In the end, he caught 7 salmon in one go. When luck comes, nothing can stop it. He gathered some dry bark to use as firewood, and soon sat by the lake enjoying a delicious meal. The smell of grilled fish filled the air. The meat was tender, chewy, and incredibly satisfying. Even one small fish provided plenty of energy. On Acid's side, while collecting materials by the lakeshore, she happened to find a wooden plank. Out here in the wild, this kind of thing is priceless. It took her nearly half a day to carry it back. Once at camp, she decided to expand her shelter a bit. Thanks to 2 years of climbing training, she quickly stretched the tarp to its limit. The tent instantly felt a whole circle wider. After that, she returned to the lake to gather more materials, from wooden boards to tree roots, taking anything useful she found. She hauled everything back and stayed busy for over an hour. Finally, she finished reinforcing one side of the wall. Next, she carried a few branches to cover the top. That way, the wind wouldn't cut through at night. After tidying everything up, she officially moved into her new camp on Side Zed. Today was finally the day to check the fishing net. 5 straight days without any protein, she was starving to the point of dizziness. She rushed to the lakeshore and pulled up the net. And to her surprise, the more she pulled, the more fish appeared. Her hands trembled, barely able to handle it. She grinned from ear to ear. Counting carefully, there were 10 fresh salmon in total. One haul like this was enough to eat her full and fat. She immediately carried them back, lit a fire, and cooked a piece right away. The aroma spread everywhere. The fish tasted natural, fragrant, sweet, and tender. Maybe because she was too hungry, she devoured 7 fish in one go. She only stopped when she physically couldn't swallow another bite. It seemed stockpiling food was simply impossible for her. Living in the moment was enough. Yet by day 6, she slept straight through until noon. Raasmus lazily got up, still fueled by the fish from before. Every day he hoped the net would bring in more, but when he checked the lake, he only got one tiny fish. The result clearly disappointed him. If even the fish disappeared later, that would be a disaster. To avoid starving, he carried his metal pot up the mountain to gather wild berries. He hoped this would reduce pressure on the net a little. But as time went on, his mood kept sinking. Sometimes he just sat there, lost in thought about life. Judging by his state, he might not last much longer. The next morning, he went to check the lake again. Luckily, this time, he still got 2 small fish. He threw away the heads. He kept only the best parts of the body for cooking. In the current situation, he could only keep going as far as he was able, because if one day he could no longer catch fish, he figured he would probably have to withdraw. Time moved on to day 8. Although food wasn't an immediate concern for now, Z constantly felt exhausted. She didn't know if it was because of her age, but even a little activity forced her to sit down and rest. She didn't want to keep living in that cramped little tent. She planned to build a larger shelter beside it, but with her current strength, heavy tasks like that were almost unbearable. After just a few swings, she felt dizzy and lightheaded. Clearly, if she kept pushing like this, her body would sooner or later break down. Thinking about the retirement money she hadn't even spent yet, she didn't want to risk her life and die in this wilderness. Time advanced to day 10. A yacht broke the still surface of the lake. At this point, 2 players on the island both wanted to quit. When the boat docked, Z had already been waiting by the shore for a long time. After 10 days of experiencing wilderness life, she realized her body truly couldn't handle it anymore. She didn't want to push herself and suffer lasting consequences, so after much thought, she decided to withdraw early. The opportunity should be left to the younger generation. After packing up, she left the competition with regret. Meanwhile, on Sandside, things were truly miserable. Every day she could only crawl on the ground picking wild berries to survive. For her, lasting until day 10 was already a miracle. Yet she still wanted to challenge herself a little more. She was determined to eat her first piece of fish since arriving here. She went back to the lake to check the net. Finally, after searching around, she truly caught a small fish. This made her so excited she jumped up and down. She cleaned and grilled it right on the spot. Watching the pan of fish bubbling, she finally understood what real happiness felt like. On Ashit's side, she could be said to be the most stable among the women. She even wanted to make herself a soft single bed. In her view, even in the wild, quality of life still had to be maintained. After finishing, she went to the lake to check her net. Perhaps because the location was favorable, in just a short time, she pulled up 18 salmon. This kind of luck and skill was truly unmatched. Enough food for half a month. She cleaned the fish, removing the innards, then neatly skewered them on wooden sticks to smoke. Time moved on to day 12. After several days in a row without catching any fish, Raasmus gradually lost all morale. With no other options and already mentally fragile, he sighed and said he shouldn't have joined this program. He sat on the mountainside, deep in thought, right for over 2.5 hours. Finally, he decided to call and withdraw. A yacht slowly approached the shore again. He said seeing other people again felt unbelievably wonderful. He packed his things quickly, then eagerly boarded the boat to go home. Time advanced to day 13. Only 5 people remained on the island. Eddie's situation at this point wasn't very optimistic. Although he still had enough to eat and wear each day, his homesickness kept growing stronger. He slept straight through until noon, then sluggishly crawled up. According to the Wilderness Survival Handbook of Esteford, using charcoal as toothpaste can help clean the teeth. Even deep in the mountains, he still kept his daily hygiene habits. After finishing, he went to the lakeshore to check the net. Unfortunately, for several days straight, not a single fish had been caught. He trudged back alone. Unable to stop thinking that he would soon be eating wild berries again, he let out a weary sigh. Eating that stuff every day would break even a man of steel. But without it, there was only hunger. While picking berries, he also gathered some juniper berries, crushing them to release their distinct aroma, hoping the scent might lure fish closer. While waiting, he sat in front of his tent, carving small wooden items to pass the time as a way to ease his homesickness. In the afternoon, he returned to the lake to check the net. The lake surface was violently churning, but fortunately, the net still brought back 2 small fish. Half relieved, half starving, he quickly cleaned the fish to cook. But just as he finished preparing, he suddenly felt chest tightness and a severe headache. This was definitely not a good sign. On Gel's side, although he didn't catch many fish, eating 1 a day was still manageable. He returned to camp and picked some more wild berries, barely enough for today. Seeing that net fishing was becoming less effective, he decided to craft a fishing rod himself. A few days ago, he had picked up a naturally curved tree root, perfect for making a reel frame. With tools in hand, he went to the lake to test it. He grabbed another branch to use as a casting rod and flicked the bait into the water. He thought fish would bite quickly, but after waiting 2.5 hours, he didn't even see a single fish scale. This result was beyond imagination. Not a bit of luck at all. It seemed the heavens truly didn't want him to have food. You never know pain until you compare. While some were suffering without catching a single fish, Ushit was feasting on fish nonstop. She only needed to glance at the lake, and in one round she'd get over 20 fish. Looking into the water was even more shocking. Fat salmon packed the net one after another. Counting carefully, there were 23 fresh salmon in total. With resources like this, the others simply couldn't compete. She carried the haul back to camp, calmly grilled fish, and enjoyed a hearty meal. Even after eating, fish still hung all over her tent. She didn't even feel like trying hard anymore, just wanted to lie on the ground and enjoy life. Eddie, on the other hand, was overwhelmed by prolonged loneliness, his spirit nearly collapsing. This morning, he grilled his last fish for breakfast. At first, he planned to split it into 3 meals, but then gave up. He ate it all at once. The fish he caught afterward, he didn't even bother storing, just cooked them by the lake and ate them immediately. It seemed he was so hungry he couldn't think long-term anymore. After eating, he lay flat on the ground. On Sand's side, idle hands truly led to restless thoughts. With nothing to do. As soon as she regained a bit of strength, she put on her backpack and hiked up the mountain, enjoying the scenery. When she saw a stream, she bent down and took a gulp of cold water, even confidently claiming it was a wise decision. After expending so much energy, she finally dragged herself to the summit and enjoyed the view for a while. Then she shouldered her backpack again and headed back to camp. By now, her body weight had dropped by 7 or 8 kilograms. If she couldn't catch more fish, she probably wouldn't last until the end. Another person making puzzling choices was Law. Instead of worrying about food, he grabbed his backpack and went mountain climbing, sightseeing like a tourist. Unlike the others, once he started climbing, he went all the way as if he never felt tired. He wandered through the mountains for more than 3 hours. Only when he was completely exhausted did he stop by a stream for a mouthful of cold water. Back at camp, he still refused to rest. His whole body was drenched in sweat. He filled a waterproof tarp with water, then poured in some hot water he had boiled earlier. Once everything was ready, he began to bathe. What's surprising is that he even had shampoo. According to him, he found it by the lakeshore on the 4th day. From the smell, where it still seemed usable, now he didn't have to worry about an itchy scalp anymore. Day 14 truly showed the contrast between comfort and hardship. When she woke up, the artist's hair was a tangled mess, like a wasp's nest. She hadn't washed it for half a month. She even thought about braiding it into curls just to be done with it. But looks no longer mattered, because food was no longer a concern. So she decided it was time to upgrade her quality of life. She gathered all the old scraps and pushed them aside, then began paving the floor with stones to keep the ground dry. Before long, the shelter looked completely different. She also neatly reorganized the kitchen corner. Beside it was a cozy bed and even a small bookshelf. All her belongings were arranged in perfect order. Looking at her work, she smiled with satisfaction. With conditions like this, living another half year, or even a full year, wouldn't be a problem. Time moved on to day 15. Chip was singing as he went to check his fishing net. At the same time, Gel also went to the lake, and the result was as usual. It was the classic case of one with too much, another with nothing. Gel had only a single small fish in his net. Meanwhile, Ashkit easily pulled up 8 fish. Day after day, it went on like this. She was almost falling in love with this freezing place. If she kept this pace, the championship title would surely be hers. Over with Eddie, early in the morning he picked some juniper leaves by the lake and boiled them over a strong fire. Everyone thought he was making tea. Unexpectedly, he used the water to bathe instead. It's said that juniper leaves contain many essential oils, which can clean the body effectively. After bathing, he felt completely refreshed. He lay sunbathing on a rock, philosophizing about life. Day 16. The arrival of a yacht signaled that someone else couldn't endure it anymore. By now, most of the remaining people had begun to give up. The scene shifted to SD. He was already standing by the lakeshore, waiting. He said that it wasn't the lack of food that made him quit, but the loneliness. This place was more than he could bear. Compared to $500,000, being back with family was far more valuable. After packing up, he left the competition with regret. At this point, only 4 people remained. As time passed, the loneliness of the wilderness was slowly gnawing at everyone's will. Time moved to day 17. In the middle of the night, while sleeping soundly, Gail suddenly heard a strange noise inside the tent. He quickly turned on his flashlight to check. On top of the tent, there was a small frog, faced with protein practically hopping into his mouth. Without hesitation, he caught it and tossed it straight into the pot. The next morning, he took the frog from the night before down to the lakeshore to process it. Even on the brink of death, the frog still tried to jump away. He decisively ended it with a single swing of the axe. He discarded the upper body, keeping only the pair of plump thighs to make himself lunch. Back at camp, he cooked them plainly. Had no scallions, no garlic, no seasonings at all, just the raw, original flavor of survival. In less than 3 minutes, the aroma spread throughout the camp. He sat down contentedly to enjoy the frog meat, tender on the inside, chewy and rich, almost on par with beef. Though it barely filled the gaps between his teeth, changing flavors after so many days was still a huge joy. Over on Sandside, she had only managed to eat 3 fish so far. Today was another day to check the nets. Perhaps the heavens finally took pity on her. A small salmon was caught in the net, but when she checked the second net, the water was crystal clear, cleaner than her own reflection. The joy was painfully short-lived. Staring at the single fish, tears streamed down her face. Living here was truly suffering. She went to the lake to clean the fish, preparing for her rare meal. Though there wasn't much meat, it was still a delicacy in the wilderness. The weather grew colder, and as soon as she returned to camp, she was shivering uncontrollably. She immediately started jumping in place, doing a few warm-up exercises to get her blood flowing. Her hands and feet slowly regained feeling. Once that was done, she cooked her lunch. Logically, being full should have made her happy. But she just sat there, staring into the distance, doubting herself. A wave of loneliness and despair washed over her. She burst into tears without even realizing it. At this pace of 3 days starving and 8 meals barely eaten, it probably wouldn't be long before she would be forced to leave the competition. On Ella's side, over the past few days, he had renovated his shelter. Windproof and rainproof, everything had been significantly upgraded. The items inside the shelter were neatly organized. All the miscellaneous stuff was piled outside. Once finished, he headed back to the lakeshore to check his nets. Coming back empty-handed was almost unheard of for him. After checking 2 nets in a row, he caught only a single small fish. This result was a frustrating drop in luck, but unavoidable. He had no choice but to head into the mountains again to pick wild berries for sustenance. Even though he knew those tiny berries wouldn't fill the gaps between his teeth, the nets were yielding worse results by the day. He realized that if he wanted more fish meat, he had to come up with another plan. So he decided to craft a wooden fishing tool himself, a homemade wooden fishing rig. He carefully measured every detail and got to work. His goal was to make a floating wooden buoy, then attach a fishing line and hook to it. After that, he would bait it and let it drift out on the lake. As long as it could float toward the middle of the lake, who knows? Maybe he'd hook a monster like Askit does. Askit remained the most steadily progressing participant. In her free time, she sat inside the shelter crafting by hand. She even molded a drinking cup with her bare hands. Beautiful and practical, no less impressive than store-bought goods. After finishing, she went to the lake to check her nets. As she walked, the corners of her mouth curled upward, because she knew for sure today would be another bountiful day. Sure enough, when she pulled up the net, there were 6 fresh fish again. It was as if luck and the fish resources themselves favored her. Even though she struck it big every single day, she still felt genuine joy each time. However, every time she cooked inside the shelter, the smoke made her eyes sting badly. After thinking it over, she finally decided to add a chimney. Standing on her homemade tripod, she used a knife to cut a large hole in the tarp roof. Then she threaded a piece of birch bark around the opening, covered tightly with layers of leaves. Just like that, a proper smoke ventilation system was complete. When he lit a test fire, the smoke drifted smoothly outside. Even with a strong flame, it was no longer suffocating like before. Day 18 arrived. Gilo also began climbing the mountain. Looking back, everyone who had tried the climb before eventually gave up. Could he break that curse? He packed up his gear and hoisted a backpack weighing nearly 50 kilograms and began his journey along the trail. Along the way, he even picked up a few pairs of deer antlers. Useless, maybe, but still a memorable keepsake. After more than 2.5 hours of climbing uphill, he reached the summit. Before the magnificent natural scenery stretching below, he was so overwhelmed with excitement that he stripped naked and stood completely bare under the open sky, shouting loudly across the mountains and forests. As for what he did after that, perhaps only the wind and the mountains know. Meanwhile, the fishing setup he had made a few days earlier still showed no sign of activity. He couldn't just stay rooted in one place, waiting forever. He decided to change locations, to the stream he had seen while climbing the mountain the other day. He packed up and set off again, hoping for better luck this time. This journey was completely different from his usual ones. Because he had decided to set nets on the mountain, he had to stay there overnight for several days. But the higher he climbed, the thicker the fog became, so dense that even the compass in his hand almost became useless. Fortunately, thanks to his memory, he still found the correct direction. Following the small stream upstream, humming after more than 3 exhausting hours of climbing, a vast lake gradually appeared before his eyes. Utterly drained, he collapsed onto the ground to catch his breath. Night fell. He lit a campfire, accepting for now that he would spend the night here, while above him, brilliant auroras lit up the sky, dancing and leaving him in awe of nature's wondrous beauty. The next morning, when he woke, his entire sleeping bag was covered in a layer of frost, showing just how brutal the nighttime cold had been. After packing up, he took his fishing rod to the lakeshore. Not long after casting the bait, the rod began to shake. A fish was on the line. Sure enough, the fish resources here were far richer than at the foot of the mountain. On Askit's side, even though the morning cold made her hands nearly numb, the joy of the harvest still filled her with excitement. Carefully pulling up the net in the freezing weather, today's catch wasn't much, only about 4 or 5 fish, but that was enough to make her satisfied. Over on Sandside, she was shivering from the cold, so she could only stand up and exercise to warm herself. Today, luck smiled on her. She caught a bigger fish than usual. After cooking it, she sat and ate right there, savoring each bite in rare satisfaction. With her stomach filled, the hope of survival flickered back to life. As for Gel, who knows if he was just bored or too idle? He gathered wood by the lake and built an enormous bonfire tower. After lighting it, he sang while watching the flames flicker. But as the fire slowly died down, his patience seemed to fade with it. The next morning, a yacht slowly glided across the lake's surface once again. There was no need to say it. Another person couldn't endure it anymore as the boat docked. Gel stood ready, smiling as he greeted him. At first, he spoke with full confidence that he would endure. But as time passed, his mental state grew more and more exhausted. In recent days, he felt life here had become truly meaningless. Staying longer, he feared he might fall into depression. Better to pack up early and head home. He gathered his belongings and left the challenge with lingering regret. Now, only the final 3 remained on the island. Time moved on to day 21. After catching several big fish in the mountains yesterday, Law decided to return to the old camp. He, even knowing that carrying a 50-kilogram backpack down the mountain would not be easy. Along the way, he came across a patch of wild dandelions. According to a Stafford survival handbook, dandelion stems can help cool the body and detoxify. He immediately picked a few and chewed them on the spot, hoping for a bit more energy. After more than 3.5 hours descending slopes, he finally made it back to camp as night fell and loneliness began to creep in. During the day, work helped him forget the passing time, but at night, that feeling closed in fiercely, silent, heavy, and isolating. The next morning, Law was the first to the lake to check the net. The more he pulled, the heavier it felt. In the end, he hauled in 2 fairly large fish. Luckily, not empty-handed. At least tonight, he wouldn't go to bed hungry. Over on Sandside, luck knocked as well. Rare as it was. For the first time in many days, she caught 2 fish. Emotion surged, her hands trembling as she pulled in the net. Then she hurried back to her makeshift kitchen, lit a fire outdoors to cook. Before long, the aroma of grilled fish spread everywhere. A small meal, yet deeply satisfying. She even scraped every last bit of meat from the pot's bottom. After eating her fill and drinking enough, she took her walking stick and strolled up the mountain, rarely enjoying such peaceful moments. On Acid's side, for some reason this morning, even when she suddenly sat still as tears streamed down her face. Even though she had the most food reserves, if her spirit collapsed, no amount of food could save her. To steady herself, she decided to pack up and head into the mountains to relax. In the vast, empty wilderness, that loneliness only magnified endlessly. Only walking outside helped her temporarily forget the feeling of isolation. As she walked, admiring the scenery, her mood gradually softened. When she reached the summit, she stacked a few stones into a symbol, a personal emblem of strength. Looking around, everything was desolate and still. Suddenly, she realized sometimes you shouldn't push yourself too hard. On Law's side, before dark, he tried checking the net once more, but the wind and waves were too strong. He pulled and pulled, but got nothing. No fish in sight, only icy water and bone-deep exhaustion. No fish meant no food, and without food, the day he leaves might not be far away. Even so, he tried to keep an optimistic spirit. Day 23 began. He had slept soundly last night, yet in the morning, he found his tent completely collapsed. No need to guess, the strong winds last night were surely the cause. Today, he had planned to fish at the lake, but now, rebuilding shelter had to come first. He hadn't even had breakfast yet because there was nothing to eat. He barely had time to drag his luggage aside, then immediately got to work. If he didn't finish tonight, he'd probably have to sleep in the freezing cold again. Before starting, he still went to the lake to check the net, but the waves were too violent. The entire net was tangled tight with seaweed, twisted into a messy clump. He struggled for a long time just to pull it up. In the end, not a single fish, only a net torn to shreds. He had no choice but to go hungry and set up camp. He cut several evenly sized logs, raised them into a tripod frame, then joined them into a circle. Finally, the basic frame of his new shelter stood in place. After that, he hurried to repair the fishing net, because in this hellish place, it was his only source of food. Before nightfall, he covered the roof with a waterproof tarp, hoping it could survive the night. As for the rest, he could only leave it to fate. Day 24. A sudden storm swept across Lake Atchit. Just as she returned from checking the net, rain poured down. The result, only one single fish. The reason was obvious. The strong wind had twisted the net underwater like braided hair. In this situation, don't even dream of another catch. Looking at the tangled net, she could only comfort herself. At least there was one fish for lunch. But after wasting food earlier, she had no supplies left at all. All hope. Her survival now depended entirely on that net. On Sand's side, seeing the storm approaching, she hurried to prepare her shelter. Sawing wood, chopping firewood non-stop. Before long, she was gasping for breath, dizzy, vision spinning. Without eating at this hour, she simply had no strength left. She returned to camp, lit a fire, and grilled the remaining half fish from the morning. The fish was tender, fragrant, melting in her mouth. With every bite, her mouth watered more. On Law's side, craving more fish meat, he decided to craft a homemade lure. Using a water bottle as a makeshift line spool, he grabbed his gear and headed to the lake to try his luck. He stood for 2.5 hours in the freezing wind until his face went numb, yet didn't catch a single fish. The wind grew stronger, the lake surface raging with waves. Frustrated, he returned to camp, staring at the hut, torn open on all sides. He feared that at midnight a strong gust might rip the roof away. In weather like this, all the players huddled inside their shelters, fighting both the cold and the boredom. Day 25. Finally, someone couldn't take it anymore. The camera cut to another scene. Ackett had been standing by the lakeshore since early morning. When the show's boat reached the shore, she burst into tears at the sight of people again. Lasting over 20 days was already a miracle for her. If not for her declining morale and the fish supplies she had stored earlier running out, the championship might have been hers. But life rarely goes as we wish. She packed her belongings and left the island with regret. Now, only the final two remained. As usual, Law woke early and went to the lake, spending the entire day around his nets, catching fish, then waiting for fish. But when he pulled all the nets up, he realized the water had grown too cold. The fish had moved to deeper waters. No matter how hard he searched near the shore, there wasn't a single one in sight. Meanwhile, on Sand's side, things were getting worse. Today again, there was still no fish to eat. The hunger, combined with crushing loneliness, made her completely break down. In the end, Minchie picked up the phone and called the production team to withdraw. When the boat reached the shore, she held the staff member tightly in her arms. She said she wasn't quitting because of a lack of food, but because her spirit was completely exhausted. All the fatigue and frustration she had been bottling up were finally released in that moment. After all, for a woman over 50 years old, being able to survive alone on a deserted island for half a month was already an absolutely incredible achievement. Day 26. Now, the entire island was left with only Law. He was still tirelessly trying to find ways to catch more fish. Maybe the heavens finally took pity on him, because while pulling in his net today, he unexpectedly caught a large salmon. Judging by its size, it was enough to keep him alive for another 2 or 3 days. At the same time, the production team had brought his family to the location. Following the show's tradition, they still pretended to conduct a routine health check as part of the procedure. While he was answering interview questions, his wife and 2 children quietly walked up from behind him. The moment he saw them, all the exhaustion he had suppressed for nearly a month burst out at once. When he heard the announcement that he was the champion of this season, he couldn't hold back his emotions. He took his wife and children to see the place where he had lived. After packing up his belongings, the whole family stepped onto the boat together, carrying $500,000 in prize money. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our next exciting survival videos. Finally, share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next adventure.